All right, so at this point, if you're watching this video, that means that you have watched our introduction. You've watched the YouTube videos that we found that were instructional relating to what the Big Six is. You may have watched one, you may have watched two. That's kind of up to your teacher. You've looked at the handout. You have the handout I've given you as a resource. So let's kind of wrap up basically what you need to know. What do you need to know about the Big Six? Oh yeah, and you took your pretest. I hope some of you guys did really good, because that pretest may very well also be a post-test for a grade. That is in your teacher's ballpark there. But so what do you need to know? Well, let's see. First of all, you know who I am. I don't need to say it again. This is Mr. Camber, the librarian again. Our purpose is still to ensure the acquisition of understanding regarding the Big Six, which is a process of inquiry and information literacy, which enables students to gather, evaluate, and implement information through research. That's a lot of big words to say. We're making sure you know how to research. Okay, so the handout that I've given you, if you look at it, there's kind of two key things that are on that handout. First of all is the Big Six steps, and each one of those steps comes with questions that I find asking myself helps me to understand those steps better. And then at the bottom of the handout on the back, there's some great resources, 5 websites that have phenomenal resources to help you to understand the Big Six better, including the Big Six's official website. Okay, so step 1. Step 1's task definition, right? So the question here is one has to determine both what the problem is, which needs to be solved, as well as what information must be needed in order to solve the aforementioned problem. So in other words, what do you need to know? And what information do you need to know that stuff? So, for instance, if you have a student if one of you is perhaps pursuing understanding gun control issues better, and you decide, I want to know, my question is, that's the problem, right? Your question is the problem. Sorry about that. So my question is, should there be more strict gun control laws? Or maybe you even get a little bit more specific. Should we have more strict background checks for gun ownership, right? Okay, well, what information do you need in order to figure that out? Well, you probably need to know what gun control laws already exist. You probably need to know how those laws differ from state to state, which laws are federal and which laws are at the state level. You probably need to know how much crime is occurring on a regular basis that relates to those gun control, to use of weapons, specifically guns. You need to know how many of those guns that are being used are illegal and how many of them were obtained legally. So, for instance, many school shootings that occur because a student has gotten a hold of a gun that his parents legally owned, as opposed to a stolen gun or a gun that was bought on the black market. Okay, so what information do you need in order to be able to figure out your problem? That's just the task definition. What is my question? What do I need to know? Then we engage in our information seeking strategies. So of all the possible sources that are available, okay, and what that means is, where are you at? What resources are available to you where you are? One of the most important things you can learn how to do is to engage with the resources that are available to you. So in other words, if you have a job, don't go to your boss and ask them a question if you haven't tried to pursue that answer on your own by looking in like the company manual or asking your coworkers. Look at what resources are available to you first. And then if you can't use those, then you go to your boss. That's another resource, right? So what do we have available? Well, in our library, we're going to have databases. We're going to have different kinds of books that might solve different problems. Pardon me. So what of all the possible resources available, which of these sources are the best for the problem at hand? So in other words, if you're trying to learn something about gun control, you don't need to be reading a novel about romance has gone bad. You don't need to be looking in a nonfiction book that details the issue of abortion. You need resources that specifically deal with your concern. Our next step is location and access. So this is about locating those best sources that we already talked about, both intellectually and physically. Okay, so in other words, figuring out what they are and then figuring out where they are and getting a hold of them. If they're books, pick them up. If they're digital resources, access those. Further, you have to find the information within those resources. So just because you have a book about gun control doesn't mean you have the information that you're looking for. There are about 1 million different facets of gun control. Does this book deal with the issues of gun control you're interested in pursuing? More specifically, does it have, text evidence, support facts that you're going to be able to access and use in your own research paper? Step 4. Now, this is kind of tied into that, obviously, the use of information. So you have to be able to engage with those resources, whether that means reading them, might be listening to them if they're an audiobook, watching them if they're a video or documentary, or in some cases, even physically manipulating them. Maybe you have a model of something. Hopefully, if you're doing gun control, you're not physically manipulating a gun, unless it's in a safe environment with an expert like a police officer or someone like that can show you things about the gun without you having to handle them. And then you have to extract that specific and relevant information from the source in order to be able to use it. Finally, we get to step 5, which is synthesis. It's not the final step, but I say finally because this is where you take that information, you organize it, and put it into a product, right? And you want to make sure that this is organized in a natural, manageable, and understandable way. In other words, you can't start telling me about why bump stocks are a danger without first talking to me about what the heck a bump stock is and how frequently are they used? The same kind of background information we were talking about before. We need that background information before you can engage in the ethics of the issue, okay? Then you have to present the newly organized information in whatever format's most appropriate or required. So that might be a PowerPoint presentation. It might be an essay. I know in the case of this particular assignment, you're writing an essay and then you're going to make a PowerPoint presentation so that you can present your essay in class. So it's got to be formatted kind of 2 different ways in order to be appropriate for that assignment. And then we do come to the final step, step 6, and this is evaluation. And this is a step that a lot of people want to leave off. But after you create your product, you need to judge that product and say, is this effective? Is it doing what it's supposed to do? And you need to judge your process and say, was I efficient? Did I solve the problem? Did I answer the question in a reasonable amount of space? So I know for some of you advanced students, you want to present your teacher with your teacher's requirement is that the paper be 2 to 4 pages, and you submit an 8-page paper. That's not efficient. Okay, you need to learn how to edit down what you're saying to the most essential things. There's also the students that want to turn in a 200-word essay. Also not going to be efficient or effective. In that case specifically, it's not effective. You're not presenting enough information. Okay, so evaluate your product. Is it good? So what we've been trying to say here is that research is an absolutely necessary skill for all students and citizens. Not only do you need to be able to do research for papers in high school and college, but you need to be able to research things like political candidates before you vote, like tax laws, before you commit to things like buying a house or car or opening a business. You need to be able to research things like how to put a chain back on a pole saw if you're my wife, who's much more handy than me. I like books. So those are the kinds of things that you need to be able to research. And because the process can be daunting, it's necessary to have a strategy, and that's what Big 6 is. It's a strategy to gather, evaluate, and implement that researched information in the development of a communicative product. So I hope that this has been helpful to you. I hope that it's been supportive to you. I look forward to seeing you here in the library over the next couple of days while you're doing your research. And if there's anything I can do to help you in the process of actually developing and completing that product, please let me know. But I won't do it for you, Karen.